Welcome, guys, back to the Grateful Living podcast. Today, I'm thankful to have Glenn Robert Ford with me. Glenn is a writer, director, and actor. His first feature film, The Fix, has received 20 festival selections with 22 nominations and 6 wins. These nominations have been across 11 countries and 4 continents. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, brother. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thankful to have you on. So, for those of us that don't know you as well, take us back to the beginning, where you grew up, what type of kid you were, your family situation, things like that.
My man's taking me back. Um, as you know, I'm Glenn Robert Ford, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Uh, Born in Clinton Hill, raised in the borderline Brighton Beach, Coney Island area, South Brooklyn. Um, my mom worked for the government, for immigration, more specifically. My father worked for the Parks Department. Um, I have an older brother. He has me by 6 years, Michael, um, who's always been a bookworm. And he knew exactly what he wanted to do when he was in the third grade. He wanted to be a lawyer, and he's a lawyer to this day. And
Awesome.
when I came along, you know how they say the terrible twos, right? So when I came along, I was a very enthusiastic baby, very happy baby, very curious. And I remember my mom always telling this story because my brother had he had a big he was a big Star Wars fan, still is, but he had a big Star Wars collection as a kid. And then when I came along, he had his GI Joes as well. He says, you got to share with your brother, huh? And I came along and I broke all of those toys. And I look back at it now and I'm like, that would have been a nice chunk of change. But I had a really good childhood. My mom, she's from Marcy Projects, Tompkins houses in Brooklyn. Grew up in a single parent home. Um, I mean, both parents were in her life, but she grew up with her mom and her three brothers, and they were tough. They were really tough on her, and that's how she became tough. So, of course, you could take the person out of the area, but you can't take that environment out of the person. So, my mom, she's still to this day, she lights up the room. But back then she was very strict, as was my father. My father was very strict. He loved me dearly, but he's very stern, very old school guy. Very structured and disciplined, and my mom the same way. And my they were both hard on me as I've gotten older. They spoiled me as a kid because my brother was always away at school, so I kind of felt like an only child. Um, Up until the time that I got old enough to get a job, and my father was like, "You're gonna get yourself a job, boy." So I had to get my working papers, and I've been working since I was 14 years old. But it's those good qualities that my parents instilled in me at an early age. You know, I think that's very important when you're raising a child. It's nice to spoil them and buy them nice things, but it's also important to instill those core values so that they learn early on that life ain't a cakewalk, man.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna hand you anything. You gotta bust your ass and work hard for it.
Yep.
So
100%.
that's pretty much how my parents were raising me.
Yeah. I'm curious, given what we're going to talk about today, were you interested in film as a young person, or how did that develop over time?
Well, I was always a creative kid. I was always a curious kid and a creative kid, and I always worked with what I had. Like I remember back in the day, I used to uh, record songs on the radio, and I would make my little mix tapes, and I would create little covers. Like I would just do like this arts and crafts project just to make a cover for my cassette tape, just for my own personal, you know, pleasure, if you will. Um, as far as movies, like I love the movies. I'm an avid movie watcher. Not not as of late due to these circumstances, but I appreciate a great movie regardless if it's a drama that's Oscar worthy or it's an action movie. If it's well put together, well produced, the actors have great chemistry. I've always been into movies, but I never saw myself writing a film until I got a little bit older. I said, I'd like to write a film, but I never knew what I was going to write about until the concept just fell in my lap and hit me. I never knew that my first film was going to hit home in such a way. Um, with my film raising, substance abuse and alcohol awareness. My father was an alcoholic. So I didn't know that it was going to hit home for me with my first film. But as I've gotten older, I always had, like, I guess that interest started to grow.
Yeah, so tell the people a little bit more about, how you got into, writing a script, and then, casting actors, the whole nine yards, how what was the thought process, because a lot of people have dreams, right? And but they're just like, it's too far fetched, I didn't go to school for this, or I didn't, but you've come out here and executed, and on the first feature film, to have, 22 nominations, 20 festival selections. I mean, you've executed well too.
Thank
So yeah, of course. So kind of tell us, like, when did, the idea come to, like, try this out, and what were the elements and the beginning stages to executing that vision?
Well, before I have to take you back, I've always been a creative writer, even when I was in, I'd say, fourth grade, fifth grade. I still remember this horror series that I that I started. It was heavily based on Jason, Friday the 13th, Michael Myers. I,
Mhm.
I called him the Masked Terror, and
Okay.
I extended it all the way up until, I guess, my first year in junior high school. But I've always been a creative writer. I know you probably don't know this. Maybe you did some snooping around, but I was a spoken word poet and I did hip hop music since I was 19. And I performed at various locations. I had a mentor who uh, saw the talent, and he wanted to curve that. He said, "Yeah, you got raw talent. You can rap, but you need to learn how to make songs." His name was Rick Gonzalez, and he saw this young kid, this hungry kid that could rap his ass off. But he said, this is how you construct a song. You're hella talented, but you need to know how to, bring an audience in, you know, do this type of song, do this type of song, structure your raps. You can't just rap just to rap. You have to, provide concepts, content, so on and so forth. So like I said, I've always been a writer, and I transitioned the music into spoken word poetry. It all ties in together. It's all poetry at the end of the day. I still write spoken word poetry to this day. I wrote a spoken word piece on African American injustice in 2015, and I was invited to Malcolm X's 50th memorial to recite that piece, and that's one of the most memorable moments of my life. Ilyasha Shabazz, one of Malcolm's daughters, was there. Colleagues of Malcolm was there. Like, it was an amazing experience. And like I said, I've been writing spoken word poetry since I was in my teens. So I've always been a writer. But like I said, when the concept of the fix came into my lap, this was something a little out of my element, even though I did do school plays. I was in Dreamgirls in John Dewey High School, directed by Mr. Ramsey. His first name escapes me, but he was an amazing English teacher and a phenomenal director. And I give him props for believing in me and choosing me as one of the cast members. But I kind of had some familiarity with acting and doing a script, and I just wrote the story out. I wrote the synopsis. I wrote the story out, wrote the plot, but I had to structure it into a script. So I made it conversational. I guess that's the best reference to kind of structure a script. If you make it conversational, okay, this person's part, now this person's part. And of course, I had to do my own research on how to properly construct a script. I wanted to make it as real as possible. It's a work of fiction, but obviously there's a lot of real elements attached to it. And I feel like today, regardless of what I've done in the past, I feel like The Fix is my magnum opus at this point in my life.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about maybe for someone out there that's inspired by your story, what would you recommend, or what piece of advice do you have to, writing a script? Did you seek out feedback from people in the industry, or what tactics did you use to really create such a good script?
Oh man. I didn't reach out to many people. Um, I did in fact approach my brother, and true story, it was around third or fourth quarter of 2017, and I said, "Hey Mike, give me a list of things that you want for Christmas. I don't want you to buy me anything. All I want from you is to revise my script as a Christmas gift. No pressure, right? I don't have to
Yeah,
buy him anything.
yeah,
Oh, you just want me to proofread it?
yeah.
Fine, perfect, no pressure, because that's how important it was to me. And sure enough, it was delivered on the 25th of December,
Uh,
the revised version of the script.
yeah.
And but prior to me asking him, he read the script and he said it was good. Now, my brother's always been a tough critic, and I've spent most of my life trying to impress my brother. And I'll tell you right now, I never applied myself in school. When I got to high school, I didn't take it seriously. You know, I had reading issues in the first, I would like to say, the after fourth or fifth grade, even sixth grade in junior high school, I wasn't reading enough. My reading comprehension wasn't the greatest. Um, so my brother knew that I was bright. All my teachers knew that I was a bright kid, but I just didn't apply myself. And impressing my brother as I've gotten older was like a big accomplishment for me. I didn't care about anyone else's. I mean, compliments are great, but when it comes from your own flesh and blood, someone who's been tough on you for years, and you finally were able to get through to them, it's like, wow, I'm making strides. My brother is impressed, and it's like the weight is lifted off the shoulders, so to speak. But I did run the script by Ari Barkin, who you're friends with
His
his brother.
brother. Yep. Albert. Shout out to Albert.
What's up, Albert?
Introduced. Yeah.
Um,
Introduced us.
yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Ari's been in the industry for nearly a decade, if not more. Um, so I felt like he was the right person to go to because this is his wheelhouse, and he said it was really solid. It was powerful. And at the time, I didn't know who was going to play. I didn't know who was going to play who. I was I was mulling over being the lead and having one of my best friends of over 30 years, 33 years to be exact, Lance Liverpool, showing my age right now.
No, you're good.
um,
You're good.
I was gonna have him as the co, and I decided not to because I'm familiar with, the main character Marcus, who was he has a great family, and he has a tragedy in his life. His mom passes away, and that leads him down a dark path. He becomes an alcoholic, and then you just see the trickling effect that alcohol abuse can create. And being that I was already familiar with that experience, I wanted to challenge Lance as an actor to take on a role so he could become a character that's totally unfamiliar to him. And I feel like that's the real challenge. Like, he didn't have that growing up, and I gave him homework. I gave him, certain pieces of TV and movie characters, like notable characters. I say, listen, I don't want you to copy and Xerox these guys. I want you to watch it to get a reference of how a junkie behaves and acts. And I also want you to watch a couple of videos on YouTube, these documentaries of men and women that were alcoholics. And I want you to not copy and imitate, but I want you to get a reference so you can build your own character. You could become your own character. And of course, as a great director does, not tooting my own horn, patting myself on the back, but a director is supposed to provide insight, input. And being that I am familiar with that experience, I had to give him references. Okay, this is how I want you to say this and act this out. And this is how I want your facial expressions to look, regarding whatever line is being said. So once, as a matter of fact, Lance and I we were on vacation in Dominican Republic, and on vacation you're supposed to just relax, right? But it's okay to take an hour just to work. You have the rest of the day to scratch yourself and go back to sleep. So we were at a cafe, and we rehearsed that entire scene, and we sent it to Ari, and Ari was like, "Wow, this is powerful," and I knew we had something. And originally, the film was supposed to be just one scene, but it was an exchange between Lance and I. And fun fact about that night, that was hours before my dad's memorial. So I had emotions running, and I felt like if I channel my emotions into something that's going to be a tribute to him, I feel like I'm going to be okay that evening. And we were. And you saw,
Yeah.
there was a moment, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a moment in a frame where I'm looking at Lance. I'm looking at, Bobby's looking at Marcus, and you can see the water in my eyes.
Yeah.
I'm going through it, bro.
Yeah.
I'm going through it.
Yeah.
Um, and that was October of 2018. We shot that scene. And after we shot that, I started building around the story more. I started creating more scenes. And every time I thought I was done, I recorded another scene.
Yeah.
Every time I
Right.
thought I was done, I wrote another scene.
Yeah.
And I was fully content during the pandemic, because the pandemic, I felt it ruined my dad's tribute, because he would have been 70 last year. And we rented out a theater. We sold 111 tickets to this independent theater in Anthology Film Archives. And we had 3 weeks to sell out. Pandemic hit. I was crushed. And I was still able to, you know, do a tribute for him. I put together another trailer, even though I said I wasn't going to, but I ended up doing another trailer to pay tribute to him on his birthday. Um, but the pandemic was the gift and the curse, because it allowed me. These aren't all the film festival selections, by the way. This is an old picture. I have to
Yeah.
change that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but the pandemic, it was the gift and the curse, because it allowed us to submit to more film festivals, and it also allowed me to watch the film over and over and over and see what voids that I can fill. And I ended up creating two scenes that are one of the most talked about scenes. So I'm glad that I made that addition. The scene where he's by the docks, and he's calling
His
Deborah.
wife. Yeah.
That was a scene that we shot right after work, early in the morning. We worked a long shift, and I
No.
was like, "Yo, dude, we're gonna shoot this scene. This is great because you look tired, so you look drunk. So this is great. You look like shit. I
Yeah.
told him, I can't get a haircut for like weeks,
Yeah.
and as you can see, so dedication to the character. And then I put together uh, the other scene where Bobby, well, I'm sorry, where Marcus is showing up at Deborah's mother's house. I felt
Yep.
like I owed Rebecca L. Hargrove. Shout out to Rebecca. I felt like I owed her that scene, the only woman in my film, because there is a domestic violence scene in the movie. I felt like I owed her a scene where she is triumphant and she defends herself. And I wanted that scene to be a representation of all the women that were in abusive relationships that were strong enough to leave. And hopefully that scene will inspire women that are currently in an abusive relationship to leave, because sometimes it doesn't end well for them.
Yep. 100%. Uh, before we get into elements of the movie, you talked about knowing Lance and Ari, but you mentioned Rebecca, and then obviously you had videographers, photographers, and several other cast members. Can you talk about that process of you know finding those people?
I was let's just say I was very fortunate because Lance I've known since kindergarten. Sergio Della Vici I've known since we were teenagers. Now, he's the guy who grabbed Marcus in the street.
Mm.
He's the
Yeah.
same guy who branded Keanu Reeves in John Wick 3, the guy with the
Wow.
tattoos on his face.
Yeah.
So he was also in Creed. He didn't make the final cut, but he did get called in for Creed 2.
Nice. Wow.
Hopefully he has a shot for Creed 3.
Yeah.
Uh, Phenomenal guy, great guy. Um, Ari I've known since 2010, and he introduced me to George, his buddy,
Yep.
George V. Andriakos. Great guy. I was watching the fix with my grandfather yesterday. The day before was Veterans Day, and I wanted to spend some time with him. And he said he saw the movie, but everything was going so fast because he was with family, and he wanted to watch it again. And he he responded to George's scene by the bar. He's like, that guy looks like the guy from The Sopranos. I started laughing. My
Yeah.
grandfather's 94 years old, and he's sharp like a tack, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, he really enjoyed it. He really enjoyed the film. But uh, Ari introduced me to George, and I was looking for a wife, someone to play Marcus's wife in the movie, and Ari suggested Rebecca. And as soon as I saw her reel, I don't need to look any. I don't need to look any further. Like, she's
Yeah.
the one. She has so many different looks. It's like this girl's like a chameleon, and her talent is like a chameleon. Like,
Yeah.
she can adapt to any situation. She's an opera. I believe she's an opera singer first, then an actor, which is incredible.
Yeah.
She's on Broadway. She's done shows on Broadway. She's got numerous gigs. She's performed at Lincoln Center, Metropolitan Theater. Um, Porgy and Bess was her most notable. I believe that they were. I believe they won a Tony or an Oscar, but that's very significant.
Yeah.
So finding the people wasn't hard at all. Like I said, I was very fortunate this time around. Um, I shot, I would say 75 to 80% of the movie. And Alex, Alexander K, shout out to Alex. He shot he shot two scenes. And Mark Rain, talented guy. He does comedy content on Instagram, but he's also an actor. He's been in movies, he's been in theater on stage. And he's a phenomenal photographer and DP. And he had a prior engagement the night that I needed someone to shoot the final scene between Lance and I.
Yeah.
He had a prior engagement in Jersey. And he told me he had a prior engagement in Jersey, but he'll try. I said, listen, we'll start at 2 a.m. I don't care. I just need you behind here. And I remember getting a text message from him earlier in the day. He said, I'm on the way. Man, I was so thankful because of, obviously the next night I'm doing a eulogy for my dad.
Mm.
And I really needed this scene because this is a very powerful scene. And at the time, that was the only scene I had. And when I got the text message from him and he showed up and he did his thing and everything just came out beautifully, um, I told him I'll never forget what you've done. You don't have to do anything else for me in your life, but I'll never forget what you've done for me. He said you will always be in my good graces because of what you did that night. And I meant that. It meant a lot to me. I told him that. I told him that a few times. So he knows. He knows how important that was to me.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I shot 75 to 80% of the movie.
Yeah.
Um, Another fun fact, and when we were doing the drunk driving scenes, when
Yeah.
he was driving and then the voicemail, you could hear my voicemail in the back. I was on top of Lance's car while he was driving at 8 miles per hour. I had my camera around my neck in my hand.
Wow.
I had my other hand like hanging on like to like the edge, like this is like a little space that you could put your fingers in on the hood.
Yeah.
And I said, "Don't make any sudden stops. I'm not trying to fly off your car." I didn't have any fancy equipment, I had to do what I had to do, because I always wanted that because I like just watching the movies as a fan, like, oh, I wonder how they do that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
But obviously they had, swivels and, other vehicles where they can shoot that and zoom in lenses and stuff like that. But I didn't have all of that. So I had to do what I had to do. And
Yeah.
I guess you could count that as stunt work, huh?
Yeah. Hey.
First time for a DP stunt.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Um, I guess for anybody trying to do what you're doing in terms of like, coming out with an independent film, any more, pieces of advice on, working with actors or, you worked with friends, managing that relationship of pushing them, or, what you said, post production or filming or anything related to the process at all that you have advice on?
Um, my advice for even for folks that are writing their first film, my advice is to not be discouraged by what people may say or think. Because if you're going to be worried about what people say and think, then maybe you should just quit right there. And I don't encourage you to quit right there. I encourage you to keep writing. Now, it's one thing to be content with your own stuff, but it's also important to not be in your own head sometimes. And just don't force the issue, let it come to you naturally. And even if your first project is something that's close to home, something that's relatable, because I feel as an artist, whether you're a painter or a musician or poet, screenwriter, I feel like your best stuff comes from the heart and it comes from something that you've experienced. And my advice is to be patient, don't rush, let it come to you naturally. And it's also okay, excuse me, it's also okay to have someone who's like-minded, someone who's on the same wavelength as you creatively or intellectually, someone who takes it as seriously as you do. You don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen, but it doesn't hurt to have extra set of eyes and an extra brain to create the storm, if you will.
Yeah. Uh, you know, you mentioned your father's passing, and thank you for mentioning that and sharing that with us. Um, you know, as you talked about this film, I think resonates with a lot of people because of the realness of it. I'm curious, you know, for you, um, do you have any words on, you know, mental health, alcohol addiction, um, domestic violence, or any aspect of the film that's portrayed in terms of your own thoughts that you want to share to the world?
Well, as far as, and my grandfather pointed that out too, watching it. When he saw Marcus by the docks, my grandfather was saying, "That's how they act. That's how they act." And even before that, when he went to go see Deborah, he was saying, "Yeah, that's a lot of that happens in the black community. Um, they'll get drunk and beat up on the missus." I know a lot of that took place way back in the day when it was just a normal occurrence where the man would just beat up the woman, and not just the black community, but in a lot of households. Because when it comes to alcohol and when it comes to substance, it doesn't care who you are or where you come from. It affects everyone. But in regards to the black community, in terms of mental health, because all of that ties in together, right? You have mental health issues and you want to suppress that with a substance or with alcohol. um, Mental health isn't spoken about enough within the African American community. And most of the times when someone is going through it, someone will ask, not all the time, but someone will ask, "You good?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm good, I'm good." When you're not good, you're not good. And some people grow up in single parent homes, some people grow up with no parents, and that can take a tremendous toll on an individual. Yeah, there's success stories, there's anomalies where people they rise above adversity, and they manage to make it, you know, with little to nothing. But for the most part, I feel like people need their parents in their lives, and like I said, it could take a toll on someone, emotionally, mentally. Um, some people grew up around poverty, murder, seeing that on a daily basis, whether they grew up with their mother or father was an alcoholic or a drug addict, or they saw domestic violence in their home, that could pass down to them, and they can repeat that same cycle. You hear about men and women that were molested by either their parents or their uncles, and then they become a sex offender later on, and because they didn't get the help that they needed during that process. you know sometimes it creates a vicious cycle and a nasty trickle effect. And my advice, because my film, obviously, I hope my film is a beacon of hope for some people, because after watching the film, I want you to do all that you could possibly do to try to help someone that you claim you care about, whether it's a friend or family or somebody, your neighbor. You say hi to them every morning, but you see that they're not right. It doesn't hurt to ask. Like back in the day, neighbors used to look out for each other. Maybe still in certain places, but in all places, I don't know. But I hope that people do as much as they can, so when they go to bed at night, they don't have any regrets. Usually people have regrets when that person passes away, like, damn, I could have done more. We've all been there. We've all been there. But that doesn't mean we got to keep going there, you know?
That to me was one of the powerful aspects of this film is, you know, you have an element of don't regret it after it's too late while the person's alive, or while you're alive, whatever the case is, to do all that you can, because it hurts a lot more after the fact, and that's an incredibly great message to send.
Thank you.
Yeah. um I don't know if you want to talk about this more, but just the personal element, um, with your father. Um, and I read, I think you had a friend named Elliot Santiago. Um, anything else that you want to say with regards to the personal connection to the elements of this film?
Oh yeah, definitely. I wanted to pay homage to as many people as possible in the movie. Marcus is wearing my father's tie in the bar scene. The tombstone that he's crying on is my grandmother's tombstone, my mom's mom. She was a functioning alcoholic. Um, so I wanted to pay tribute to her. Um, the shirt that Marcus is wearing when Dom calls him, that's our friend Elliot that we've known since kindergarten, first grade. And he had his issues with alcohol and substance, with drugs. And the last scene was shot across the street from the brother of a friend of ours. Shout out to Justin Wischick, his brother Seth. He had substance issues as well, and he passed away right across the street from where we shot. So I wanted to acknowledge them in a way and pay homage to them. Um, I also pay tribute to my mom and my uncle. They weren't, they didn't have, but Frankie and Lisa, those names were mentioned by my character Bobby as Marcus's kids. Frank is my one of my favorite uncles, and Lisa is my mother's middle name. So I wanted to, just acknowledge them a little bit. But growing up, I'm blessed or thankful and fortunate to have had a dad, you know, especially during the stigma that, the stigma on Black fathers, you know, dead or in jail or deadbeats, you know. I grew up with both parents. I was very fortunate to grow up with both parents. And I'm glad that my father was in my life when, a child needed his father, a teenager needed his father, and a man in his 20s needed his father. And towards like my mid 20s, the tail end of my 20s, that's when it started to get ugly, But after my father passed, I don't really think about the bad times anymore. I just cherish the good times because at the end of the day, the alcohol didn't define who my father was, you know? And I was reassured of that when everyone showed up at my father's memorial because they knew the guy before the bottle. The bottle didn't define him, you know? So every now and again, I'll quote him, say some of his smart aleck, remarks and catchphrases just to pay tribute to him. Um, but yeah, there was some dark times, and I remember my mom texting me. She sent me a message on Facebook. She says, there was, for such a long time, there was so many thoughts and emotions and feelings that I burned. So I watched the movie over and over and over and allowed me to let it go. So I called her and she said, yeah. She was like, thank you, son, for doing that, for creating this film. And that meant everything to me. Between, you know, my mom telling me that and watching with my grandfather yesterday, that meant everything. It was equivalent to me watching the film, like me watching the film with my dad. Like if me and him were to watch it, having my grandfather watch it with me. And I watched it. My mom lives in Virginia now, but we watched the first version of the film. Originally, it was like 16 minutes, and I extended it. But she saw that powerful scene, and watching it with them, and her watching it over and over and over. That meant everything to me. And she was saying that there were moments where my character was talking to Marcus. There were moments where what some of what I said and some of what Deborah said to Marcus, she said to my dad, and that was like, whew, that was
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah. I've been fortunate.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Give me one
Yeah.
second.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've been fortunate where I haven't lost a parent yet. Um, I'm curious, obviously the wound never goes away. Having lost other family members and friends of mine,
Mhm.
but I'm curious if you have, now almost 3 years later, looking back on your grieving process, if someone lost their parent within the last week, do you have any pieces of advice on just the process of processing it to them?
Everybody deals with it differently. Um, if I didn't have a film, a lot of people wouldn't know my father passed away. I don't, like I said, everybody deals with it differently. I'm very private in regards to my personal life. Um, some people found out a year later that my father passed away.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't call you or text you or someone didn't spread the word, excuse me, amongst friends, you wouldn't have known. But being that this movie is, you know, it ties into, that experience, a lot of people knew that my father, passed away. But what I usually say to people when they lose a loved one, obviously I'll send my condolences, and I know that at this time, like whatever we say is just, it's not going to change anything. But I usually say something like, um, and I live by this. Um, Memories never die. That's one thing that this life of ours or this experience in life can't take away from you. You know, loved ones perish, but the memories don't, and they stay with you. And the cool part about being a descendant of your parent is that you came from your parent. So essentially they're still alive. I think that's so cool to think about.
Yeah.
A lot of people
That's
don't
a
really
good point.
a lot of people don't really think about it. They don't put it in that way.
I've never heard that
Sometimes
perspective.
you'll see it in the news like he is survived by his wife and kids, blah blah blah. But if you really think about it, like the biological essence of it, you're just a part of his or her DNA. Like you came from them, so essentially they're alive in you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if it wasn't for their heartbeat, you wouldn't have a heartbeat. I think that's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And it's legacy, man. Like, damn, I get to carry my dad's or my mom's baton and run with it and pick up where they left off at, or surpass them, because that's usually what you want as a parent. You want your kids to accomplish more than what you did. That's success, right? So I say to them, it never. I'm still mourning my dad. My mom is still mourning her mom. My grandmother passed away in 90, excuse me, in 94. That void never goes away. But the memories don't either. And that's the comforting part. And it's like an old record. It's like an old timeless record that you keep listening to. It's like, yeah, it's old as shit, but guess what? In 2021, I'm still fucking listening to it,
Yep.
and you can do that with your memories. You can continue to play it over and over and over again, and you laugh. And yeah, you feel the sadness, a little bit of sadness because they're no longer here, but you could keep replaying those good moments that make you feel good, and that's what I usually say to folks when they lose a loved one, is to cherish those memories, because They last forever and they can provide comfort. But the cool part about it is they're still alive in you because you came from them. So you just pick up where they left off at and honor them in that way.
Glenn, this is sort of a deep and tough question, but um, in aspects of the film and then from your own personal nature, there's an aspect of kids seeing their parent be an alcoholic. I'm curious, you know, is there any advice you have for kids in that situation?
Hmm. Well, as a kid, I didn't really see too much of it. I never saw anything physical, mostly verbal, and that could be even worse because that verbal could stay with you in your head and create a myriad of problems. Everyone's situation is different. I wish I could speak on that because I didn't see, but I guess I can speak on it because I did witness some sort of abuse. Um,
But even in your, even though your father, was in an older age and you were an older age, and not that you need to have regrets or anything like that, but I'm just asking, is there anything you would have done differently, or advise someone else in a similar situation to be like, try this immediately if you see these signs?
there were things that I've done that I wish I could have done differently. I'll just leave it at that. Um, this is a great question, but it's a tough question because you want to help them the best way you can. It's kind of hard as a kid to try to, because you don't want to take sides. You don't want to see your parents fight. Some kids do take sides, especially if they see their mother being affected by it. Uh, you want to diffuse the situation, but sometimes, you know, parents say stay in the child's place. This is grown folks' business, none of your business. So it's really kind of tough to navigate through or try to rectify. Um, what I will say is try to diffuse the situation as best as you can. But if it gets out of hand, then you just have to call the police. That's 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 ultimately the best situation to to handle. This is just the best only alternative that I can think of at that point. If you can diffuse it on your own, great. But if it's out of your hands and it's getting detrimental, then contact the police.
Yeah. Glenn, one aspect I didn't ask about, the cool part about this film, I think, for everyone is the depiction of African Americans. All of the main characters um, are African American, and I think in minority communities, mental health is, um, you know, there is a stigma with it. You know, um, what was that like? I mean, have you been able to reflect on that? How cool that is, for however many people are going to watch this film, that they can see, a black family in this situation. Um, but also B, the conversation and dialogue of minorities talking about mental health as a result of your film. Have you been able to process how beautiful that is?
Yeah, yeah. It's creating more conversations, and that's the whole point of the film. I mean, it's I've said this before. It's great to showcase the talents and their skills and their performances. That's great. But the most important part is impacting lives and creating conversations, creating a dialogue so people can have these discussions that can impact a life and save a life. If I get a message or a phone call, hearing or reading about someone being so impacted from this film that they have changed their mind on suicide or decided to go to rehab, that'll hit me right. That'll hit me right in the feels, man.
Yep.
That'll be the ultimate accomplishment. Hearing my mom and how she felt being so impacted by it, that meant everything to me. Sitting down with my grandfather, that meant everything to me. But hearing a stranger reaching out, or even a friend, and saying that, you know what, this film touched me or impacted me in a way that changed me, or it saved my life. I'd probably have so many emotions going, running through after that, because
Yeah.
that's the point of this film.
And I think every person that's watched it has reflected on their own mental health and their own, family and friends, um, whether they told you that or not. And that's quite powerful.
Yeah, a coworker of myself and Lance, we both work for New York City Transit. That's our day job,
Yeah.
or night job rather. Um, One of the coworkers texted Lance and said that when he saw Marcus's character, he saw himself because he used to be that, and he was so moved by the film because of that. He's sober now, which is great,
That's awesome.
but he was very affected by the film, and he said it was very powerful, and the message that I was sending definitely got across.
Yeah. Um, I don't know what type of feedback in terms of you know, part two or whatnot, if anyone's said that. I know I've seen some of the comments and what happens to Marcus.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell
No
any of
spoilers.
the
No spoilers.
yeah, yeah. Hey, do you want to
Hey, if you're watching this, I hope you already watched the film because we're spoiling this shit right
yeah.
now.
Do you want to say anything to the fans of the film, and is there going to be a part two? Are we going to know the next part of what happens to Marcus, or is that to be
Well,
determined?
when you see a coworker or a stranger in the street, or maybe even a neighbor, you see they're in a bad way, you know, you don't know how their life is going to end up. Life is unexpected. Life is an open book, you know. Um, so I wanted to leave it just like that. Maybe he could have gotten help. Maybe he attempted suicide on another day. You don't know that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Such is life. You may see someone that was on a straight and narrow and then it became an alcoholic, and then you didn't see them after that. Did that person die, or did that person move and get help? We don't know. So the ending is open for everyone's interpretation. I've gotten numerous messages and comments in person about, yo, man, did he pay him back? Like, did he get back with his wife? What's up, bro?
yeah,
How you gonna give me a less than a half hour? Should have been an hour. I wanted to see the rest. I'm like, you lucky that I extended the film.
yeah.
But um, all I can say is right now, the fix is what it is right now.
Mm, sounds good.
Yeah.
You mentioned it a little bit, but obviously you have your own day job. Do you have any advice for people on pursuing their passions outside of their job, and how you've kept yourself going
It's
and
not
motivated?
easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy at all. I don't have a set schedule. My schedule it fluctuates every week. I can work anywhere between 8 and 16 hours. Um, I've been asked numerous times.
A day, not a week. You
What
said
you say?
8? You said 8, right?
I could work anywhere between 8 and 16 hours.
Yeah, yeah, a day, not for
Yeah,
the
a
whole
day. No,
not
not a
for the
week.
whole
No, no,
week.
no. No, no,
Yeah, yeah.
no. No,
Just
no.
to be clear for everyone.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But I've been asked numerous times, how do you do all that you do? And I just make shit work, you know. Um, I do what I can. Everyone has 24 hours in a day. It's what you make of it, right?
Yeah.
I have three inspirations in my life, or maybe four. And I always revert to these four elements of inspiration. The first one being my ancestors. They dealt with pandemics every damn day. You know, my slave ancestors, they were shackled, they were beaten, they were raped, they were murdered, they were burned, they were fed scraps. We see when we experienced this pandemic, we didn't know how to prepare for it because we never dealt with something like this before, right?
Yeah.
Um, some people were broken from this experience. Some people came out as warriors, and we're still going through this, right?
Yep.
My slave ancestors, how do you get used to getting beaten every day? How do you get used to just being out in the sun all day long? How do you get used to being raped and getting your family separated? Fuck wearing a mask. I'm not free. I have to do this and that and this and that and deal with the atrocities every single day for years. How do you get used to that? You know?
That's a great
So
perspective.
I thought about what they've endured. And when times get tough for me, I think about that and how some of them died with that hope that there were going to be brighter days. Imagine that. Imagine having hope for a better life. You're holding on to this hope for days, weeks, months, years, decades, and it never comes.
Yeah.
And then you die with that fucking hope. Meanwhile, we're in a country where we can virtually go, figuratively speaking, we can go hunting on a full stomach and still not be satisfied. And we complain. Oh, Monday, Monday, Monday. I hate Mondays. Oh, the case of the Mondays. If it wasn't for fucking Monday, you wouldn't have a weekend to enjoy. You better be thankful for your Mondays. Because for some people, Monday is just another day without a job, another day in prison, looking at the fucking walls. If it wasn't for your Monday, you would not be able to enjoy your vacation. You would not be able to feed your body full of junk and alcohol because of your Monday. Maybe if you cut back on the junk and the alcohol, you wouldn't feel so bad about the Mondays. But that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
So I say that to say we shouldn't complain about all of the things that we're afforded. Think
Yeah.
about your ancestors and what the fuck they dealt with. You think they were stressing out about a fucking Monday? Every
Yeah.
day was Monday for them.
Yeah.
Another point, another element of inspiration. My mother, over 10 surgeries, 2 kidney transplants, skin cancer. She had cancer in 2000. She had a second transplant in 98. When she was diagnosed with cancer in 2000, the doctor said we have to get rid of the kidney or else the cancer will kill her. So my mother's been back on dialysis since 2000. So this is 21 years she's been on a machine for 3 days a week, 4 hours a day, taking blood out of her body to clean it, putting back into her body because she doesn't have functioning kidneys. So essentially, she could die on that machine any given day. She's seen it happen. My mother's heart stopped. She's flatlined a couple of times. Doctors had to revive her. You know how much of a fucking toll that takes on an individual that's dealing with an alcoholic father and then dealing with a mom that's going through things like that? That shit, talk about mental health, that shit right there can take a tremendous toll on somebody.
Yeah.
Um, can you hear the rain?
Yeah, it's all
Can you hear
good.
the rain in the back?
Yeah, it's all good.
Um, my mom, all of those health issues, you know, she's had heart attacks. She's got hit by a car on 2 different occasions and has dealt with the alcoholic husband for the last 15 years of his life.
No.
My mother has been through so much. Can she get a break? On days that she's not on dialysis, and some days that she is on dialysis, she still wears that smile on her face.
Yeah.
My mother retired through disability in 94. She got bored. You know, she was on dialysis, but she got bored. She wanted to work again. So now my mom has 2 pensions, one from the government, one from the Board of Ed. So my mom, I'm doing a documentary on my mother, by the way. Her story is phenomenal. But my mom is she is the quintessential superwoman, Wonder Woman. She's the
100%.
strongest person I know. Someone who has gone through so much in her life, but she still wears a smile on her face. Her faith is tremendous, and she still lives her life the best way that she can. She's retired now. She's living her best life, but she's still on the go. A little stubborn at times, but she's still on the go. You know, she gave her life to Christ. She's still that tough cookie from the projects, but she doesn't have to be. You know, she's spiritually tough. She's mentally tough, emotionally tough. You know, she had to be to endure all of those things all of those traumas in her life. You know, another element of inspiration. My grandfather, who lives across the street from me, he's 94 years old, World War II veteran, first generation transit worker. My uncle also worked for transit. Here's a man who is tired, and he's been tired for so many years. I would say my grandfather's been tired for over 15 years, right? Because he's the only one of 11 kids that's still alive. So all his siblings die. He saw most of his coworkers die, his friends die. You know, he's got grandkids and great grandkids that keep him going. But here's a man who's been tired for so long. But you know what? He still puts his shoes on every day by himself. Seen it all, been through it all. I'm tired. I'm sick. I got issues. I got health issues. But he still puts his shoes on every single day. If that ain't inspiration, I don't know what is. And he's not a health nut like me. You know, he's got to take all of these pills for this and pills for that and pills for that. And he'll say, Glenn, I'm old. He'll say that. But you know, like when I call my grandfather on the phone and I talk to him, I ask him how he's doing, he'll start off slow and then he'll pick back up and he literally talks faster than me. I thought my father talked fast. My grandfather talks really fast. And it's like, I got some old people, they talk a little slower now that they're older, but my grandfather is sharp as a tack. Sharp as a tack, man. Um, my fourth element of inspiration would be a baby. And usually when I say that, I get a weird look or a chuckle. And I want to know where we where did we go from, or how did we go from being a resilient child, being a relentless child, to being stagnant and an individual that's not fearless? I'm going to ask you a question. What does a baby do? And what are some of the things that a baby does?
Play, cry. Uh, I don't know what else.
They're crawling, right?
Yeah, crawling. Yep.
But what are they attempting to do?
They're trying to walk.
And what happens?
They fall down.
And then what happens?
They try again.
And then what happens?
They keep trying.
You see that pattern, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're not thinking about, this is too difficult. This is too hard. I'm going to sit this one out, coach. Take me out the game. No, they don't do that. They keep going. They keep trying. They keep doing. And that's my fourth element of inspiration. And that's like, in layman's terms, my advice to people who are reluctant to try something new or try something different, because walking is not familiar to this baby. They're used to crawling. It's easy, right?
Yeah.
Walking is hard for them. Walking is difficult because they keep fucking falling. So I say that to say to people, yeah, this shit ain't easy. You think writing a film was easy because I could relate to it? That shit was fucking hard. There were many nights that I looked in front of the computer with tons of video footage. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, God damn, I'm not an editor. I'm not a sound engineer. I've never done a movie before, but I'm already in it. I can't quit now because I spent all this time fucking shooting and writing shit and telling people that I'm coming out with a film. I'm already in it, and yeah, I'm gonna make mistakes. But if I'm gonna be afraid to make a mistake, then I should just quit right there. We're not perfect, but we could strive to be the best that we could possibly be. Like, people need to ask themselves, did I give it my all? Did I do everything I could possibly do? Did I? Like, when you're doing a push-up and I'm doing push-ups to failure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's just say I can only do 10, right? I stop at 10. But that 10th push-up, there was no struggle. My arms weren't shaking. I have to ask myself, did I do all that I could possibly do? 10 was the limit? Or did I just want to stop at 10 because that was just the even number? No, that's not failure. I'm going to do more push-ups until my arms are shaking and I physically can't push myself up. Oh shit. Oh, I just did 62. I tried to do 63, but my arms are shaking and I physically couldn't do anymore. Oh, I worked myself to the limit. I did as best as I possibly could do.
Yeah.
And I remember, I won't name any names, but he knows who he is. And I love him. But I submitted to so many different film festivals. And even the big ones, top tier ones, lower tier ones, it's still hard to get into a film festival. Even good films don't get into a film festival. And I was told, I could have told you to save your money. And I said, when I go into a restaurant and I expect the food to be outstanding because I'm paying a pretty penny for this food. Great decor, great ambiance. I am expecting to get I'm expecting for the food to be equivalent to the value that I'm forking out, and it doesn't meet my standards, right? I can't really get my money back because I ate the food, right? I've spent my money on things that I regret. I've bought things that I shouldn't have bought, but I'm putting my chips in the basket of something that is very important to me, something dear to my heart. This is my craft. I'm investing in my creation. Let them tell me no. I don't want to be reluctant to pay a fee to submit to a festival and then think about what could have happened or what should have happened. Oh, damn, maybe they could have selected me. No, I want them to tell me no. Will I be disappointed? Yes. But will I regret the purchase? Absolutely not.
You went for it.
Because I believed in myself. You know, I have this quote, even when I doubted myself, I still proved myself wrong. Because we all have doubts within ourselves. But you have to overcome that. And you got to believe in you. No one's going to go harder for you than you. And, you know, I say all the time, I'm going to spend more time in the ground than I'm going to spend out of it. And the time that I am above ground, I don't know how much time I do have. My grandfather's 94. He's very fortunate to live that age, dealing with what he dealt with. The World War II, segregation, racism, working among steel dust in New York City transit, health issues. He's very fortunate to live to 94 and still kicking death's ass, still collecting a pension. I don't know how much time I have. I hope I live to be as long as he's living. That's a blessing. So I'm going to live my life the best way that I possibly can. And I'm always going to go hard for myself. I'm always going to create, and I'm always going to be passionate about the things that I do create. You know, I want to accomplish my dreams. And I want to be 94 years old talking about all the cool shit that I've accomplished in life. That's my ultimate goal. I said I was going to do this and I did it. So I say that to say to people, follow up on your dreams, even when nobody believes in you. Follow up on your dreams. Fuck what anybody else has to say. Fuck what anybody else thinks. And that goes with friends and family. And I've learned, especially last year, that I had a rough year. I've learned to tune people out. I've learned to outgrow people, friends and family. So, you know, I've appreciated my solitude so much, especially after last year, that I've just focused on the things that I enjoy and to focus on the things that I love, and to follow up on my creations and my ideas and my dreams, because people act like they got another life in the closet. This ain't Super Mario Brothers, brother. There's no sequel. There's no sequels. There's no reboots. You got one shot. There's no do-overs. You can't click undo. This ain't Photoshop. You got one life, bro, sis. Stop sitting on your talent. Stop sitting on your dreams like you got all this time in the world when you don't. Because time is going to pass you by, and the next person is going to pass you by. And when you're sleeping, guess what? Somebody else is working. Somebody else who's more hungry than you, that's working, busting their ass, doing what you're only thinking about doing. So believe in yourself when no one else will believe in you.
Man, that was powerful. You have a career in motivational speaking for sure. And regardless, you should start now just doing some Instagram content. Turn that camera around, man. People could use what you just said. Um, if you have the time. Uh, yeah, thank you for that, Glenn. You mentioned last year. Do you want to speak any more about last year?
Yeah, I'll touch on it briefly.
Yeah.
Um, I believe March of last year. I want to get the date right, and I, God forgive me if I forget the date, but there was a New York City Transit employee, Garrett Goebel, really really great dude, man. Every time I would bump into him, he was just light up the room, man. He was just so down to earth. He'd give you the shirt off his back. That's the type of guy he was. And I get a message. No, I get a message from a group transit chat. It was his picture. And then I click on the article and I saw that he passed away. And he was working. He was operating the two line, midnights. I remember the last time I saw him was like 2 weeks prior to his death. And someone set the tracks on fire at 110th Street Central Park on the 2 and 3 line. And that station is notorious for drug usage. People are smoking crack, people are shooting with needles, um, so on and so forth. Someone set the tracks on fire. He was trying to evacuate passengers, and he died from the smoke, died from smoke inhalation. And that hit me in the gut because he was such a great dude, man. And but the fact that he left behind I want to say he left behind a 10-year-old and a 5-month-old. That that was it's terrible. Not only was he a great guy, but he was a great father, great husband. And the fact that his kids are gonna grow up without a dad, it hurts. But they're gonna grow up knowing that his father was a hero. So that's the only upside. Fast forward to I think around that time, I think it was February. February, my one of my cousins I didn't know too well, she had passed away. Even though I didn't know her too well, I don't think we've ever met. We may have met when we were kids. It's still family, you know. And you reach out to the siblings who you did know well, and any loss in the family, whether you know them or not, is still painful to some degree because you feel
Mhm.
sorrow for that person.
Yeah.
You feel sorrow for the parents and the siblings. So that's two. In May, Shad Gaspard. I'm not sure if you're a wrestling fan, if you were ever a wrestling fan.
No, no.
Shad Gaspard, most notably known as one half of Crime Time. I went to high school with his tag team partner, Jason Paul.
Mm.
Jason introduced me to Shad during WrestleMania weekend in 2019. There's an event called Wale Mania where rapper Wale, who's a big wrestling fan. He would have this show. He would host this event called Wale Mania where they bridge the gap between hip hop and rap. I'm sorry, hip hop and wrestling. And myself, Jason, and Shad. That's when I first met Shad because he's seen my wrestling skits on Instagram. We all got together and we became acquainted. And fast forward, he wanted me to do voiceovers, do voice impressions of this wrestling cartoon that he was coming out with. So he wanted me to do various characters. So we were in contact with whether text or via email. And our last conversation that we had in April was about the pandemic and how he knew someone in the military and how pretty soon they were going to be shutting down the country because they just had a briefing. And we were talking about death in that conversation, which was very eerie because Shad ended up passing away in May. Him and his son, and Shad and his son were swimming. They both lived in California. They were swimming in California, and they both got snatched by a riptide. And The lifeguards came and Shad was saying to save my son first, save my son. And when it was time to get Shad, they found his body 3 days later. And that was just rough. That was rough.
I'm
But
sorry.
just like Garrett, Shad died a hero as well. And that'll tell you everything you need to know about the guy. When I first met him, I felt like he was a friend for years. And we weren't close, but I spoke to him recently, and he acknowledged me in this podcast interview that he was featured in, and I was supposed to do voiceovers for his cartoon. Like, we were acquainted, and that sucks. Um, I lost um, one of my aunts passed away, and during that whole time, my older cousin, I haven't seen him since I was a teenager, but he suffered a heart attack. Later on that night, his mom, my aunt, suffered a heart attack in her sleep and she passed away. The very next day, his sister, my other cousin, who was so close to her mom, she suffered a heart attack because she was so overwhelmed by her mom having a heart attack. Both of the kids recovered from the heart attack, but they had to bury their mom. And the last time I saw my aunt, she was at my dad's memorial. And my mother was telling me that she was my father's favorite cousin. And I was like, could it get any worse for this year? And I'm not gonna really touch upon this. I was in an off and on relationship, and I, I had broke up. I had broken up with my then girlfriend at the time, but it was a long relationship. So it took me a while to get over it. Ultimately, it was the best decision for the both of us, but still, because still your best friend, right?
Yeah, the
So,
emotional connection.
but all of the deaths that I was experiencing kind of over overrided it, or overpowered it, I guess. But it didn't stop. Um, my mom had a near-death experience that adds to the boatload of health issues she had. My mother was at my aunt's house, and I'll make it short. She was throwing up to the point where she wasn't throwing up anything. So she went home to go to sleep, and she was in severe pain. And my mom said to me, even with her transplants and the cancer, my mother has never been in this pain in her life. So she went to the hospital. Doctor did some tests on her and said, we need to do emergency surgery right now. It's a good thing that you came because you would not have made it through the night.
Wow.
They were on surgery on my mom for 4 hours. She had pancreatitis. Her large intestine was wrapped around her liver, and her non-working kidney started to form around her colon. And it was Halloween 2020. And they performed surgery on my mom, and she recovered. And I went to go see my mom in December. December, I thought it was over, but another friend of mine who was a fitness instructor who really cared about training clients and really cared about the health and well-being of his clients, who was also in A&E's Fit to Fat to Fit, where he gained 70 pounds to help to inspire his client to lose weight, because he was going to lose the weight with his client. It was originally supposed to be I think 20 pounds or 30 pounds, and he decided to up the ante.
Yeah.
He was actually on medication because he gained such significant weight. But he knew how to lose the weight because he was very knowledgeable in training. But he unfortunately passed away in a motorcycle accident. And what was eerie about this was when I was living in Flatbush, and this was around the tail end that my father passed away, and I saw Adonis Hill is his name. And I saw him right around the time my father passed away. The very next time I saw him, because I remember his mom having cancer and then she was doing better. But fast forward to, I'm going to say 2019. I believe it was 2019. I'm in downtown mall. I saw him in the Men's Warehouse. That's why I went in there, because I saw him. And he was with a young lady. I believe that was his daughter's mother. And he was with his daughter, adorable 2-year-old girl. And I asked him how his mom was doing. And he told me that she had passed away. And those were the last 2 times that I saw him. And then I hear that he's no longer here.
Mhm.
I cried 2 times last year. Twice. None of them from the people that have passed away. Didn't cry from my mom, didn't cry from my relationship, didn't cry from old friendships being diminished. First time I cried was when I had my first film festival selection, because of all the hard work that I put forth, and I was just so elated and just honored. The second time I cried was when I called my brother on the phone, because I was selected by the Coney Island Film Festival because of me being a young child growing up in this area, being a young kid with big dreams. My father worked here, my father passed away here, and me just wanting to impress my brother. It was just all those emotions just passing through, and I cried like a baby on the phone with my brother, because I just told him like how much that my brother meant to me and how much that I wanted to just impress him, and I just wanted him to be proud of me. And that was the last time that I cried. And it's not because I'm cynical, it's on being tough and macho. I wanted to cry. I sat down on the couch wanting to just let it all out. And I think last year, being as crazy as it was, none of the deaths on my end were from COVID. None of the health issues were from COVID. None of the losses in my life were from COVID. Surely I had, coworkers and a multitude of people in transit that passed away from COVID. But as far as like people from my circle, um, I guess you become callous at some point when you're experiencing this. When I to piggyback what I was saying about my slave ancestors who had pandemics every day, like last year was the first time where people were just seeing deaths just regularly. Are people all cried out? Or some people they just become callous to it? And you feel the hurt, you feel the pain and sorrow, but it's just like the tears aren't flowing.
You're numb.
It's like pretty much numb.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, I only cried out of happiness last year when I didn't have much happiness. But somehow the film allowed me to find happiness and find a way to honor my father, who, I'm still mourning. That was the only good that came out of last year, honestly, and my mom surviving. So even if we weren't in a pandemic, I still would have had a horrible year. But maybe that day will come. I'm still waiting. I
Yeah.
haven't cried this year.
Yeah.
Um, and I know I'll feel a lot better doing so.
Yeah. Well, first, just sorry for all the loss that happened that year. Um, that's just That's crazy. I
Mm,
think 6 in 9 months or something like that. Um, but thank you for sharing that. And I think the cool thing, at least from my perspective, is the strength that you have to keep going
mhm,
and to produce this great work during that time period. And also the character you have to remember all those names and shout them out right now.
mm,
You know, a lot of people in this interview would have, it would have been about them, their platform, trying to raise their, you know, um, whatever ceiling of
right.
people that know them or know their film. And you just spent time acknowledging so many people important to you. Says a lot about your character, a lot
Thank
about your character that you spent that time giving them flowers instead of talking positively about yourself. So I just want to say that.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, we talked about quite a bit. Um, was there anything else that you want to leave the people with? Obviously, I mean, I'm going to ask one other follow up question, but
Sure.
anything else that you want to leave the uh, people with?
Um, don't sit on your talent. Don't sit on your dreams. Always believe in yourself when no one else believes in you, and prove yourself wrong even when you doubt yourself, because you never know what magic may come from that. Because you only have one life. There's no resets or redos. So stop wasting time
Yeah.
and watch The Fix, man. It may help out someone who's affected in your life.
Yeah. And that was going to be my follow up. For people that want to support you, do you want to tell them social media handles? Tell them where they can find the film and tell them how
Sure.
they can support the film as well.
Hopefully you could put up a graphic on the bottom.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Glenn Robert Ford. It's two ends of my name. I have a special place in my heart for people who ask me if I have one end or two. So thank you for those people. Two ends of my name, Glenn Robert Ford. Um, that's my handle for Instagram. That's my handle for Twitter. I just recently started using Twitter again after so many years.
Yeah.
Um, and you can find me, Glenn Robert Ford, on YouTube as well. That's where you can find The Fix. And yeah,
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, Glenn, I just want to acknowledge.
IMDb as well.
Hey,
Sorry.
yeah. 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 Well, Glenn, I just want to acknowledge you, man. It's been a pleasure getting to know you uh, and just, inspiring people to make the most of their lives, um, safe to say, even if you were, um, obviously we don't hope this, but even if you were to pass today, the legacy of what you've built, um, through this film is incredible. And
Thank you.
I think, the listeners can see the work ethic you have in, just doing this outside of your main job and um working hard to, write a script, find actors, um film it, post produce it, submit to film festivals. I'm sure there's other steps that I didn't mention, and all of that. And so I'm glad whenever you thought of that idea, 2017 or whatever, that you went out and did it. And I'm glad that you've received so much success on your first feature film.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I think I speak for all of us, and when we say we wish you the best going forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.